Hello, everyone. Welcome back to BingX Watch. We are having an interview and AMA with Senior Associate Business Development of Avalanche of Ava Labs. Eric Kang with me today. Hi, Eric. How are you?
Good, doing well. Thanks for having me, Aziz.
It's a pleasure having you, Eric. So, can you give us a little bit background about yourself, and then we can move on with the Avalanche?
Yeah, for sure. I joined Ava Labs last September, and so it's been about a year and 2 months, 3 months, give or take. And before that, I was in a very traditional consulting career path. I was a PwC for about 4.5 years, mostly doing M&A advisory work for private equity clients. So a little bit different from what I'm doing now. When I look back, right, there's a lot of transferable skills, right? Project management skills, talking to clients, and it's not so much different from my current role, which is business development at Ava Labs. Ava Labs is a service provider for the Avalanche blockchain. We Our main focus is on ecosystem growth here, so onboarding talented development teams as well as making sure that the ecosystem is a safe place for users to really get a hold and make the best out of crypto.
Okay. And so Ava Labs is the company which holds Avalanche, or are they two separate companies?
Yeah, so they're technically two separate companies. We
Okay.
have a foundation located in Singapore. You can think of us as almost a consensus and Ethereum relationship, whereas Ava Labs is providing services and helping maintain the Avalanche blockchain.
Okay. So can you tell us more about Avalanche? What is Avalanche, and uh, is Avalanche a blockchain to build a blockchain? Is that correct?
Yeah, so Avalanche, you can think of it as almost a platform of blockchain. The fundamental difference between Avalanche and other blockchains is Avalanche consensus. In blockchain development, consensus, how the network comes to an agreement on transactions, is always the lowest common denominator. And what Avalanche consensus allows the network to do is not only maintain probably the lowest speed to finality or transaction finality in the industry, but it also allows the block Avalanche to scale horizontally. Most people know about our C chain. It's the it's the default subnet or default blockchain in the network where most of the dApps are being built today. Trader Joe, Aave, Curve, Penguin, they're all on the C chain currently. It's EVM compatible, which makes dApp deployment pretty easy end to end, right? Most dApps are going to be built on Ethereum or other EVM chains first, and then going multi-chain. But we'll also see more and more native deployment. And when I say, it's a platform of blockchains, Avalanche really allows us to scale horizontally, deploy as many blockchains as people want in parallel. Um, Closest private comparison would probably be Polkadot parachute structure, but
Mhm.
fundamentally it's very different.
Okay. And fundamentally, it's different. What are the differences? I mean, there is a relay chain on Polkadot, and there are parachains which are interconnected. But in Avalanche, you say it's horizontally. So, do how does it work?
Yeah, it all really depends on how you want to set up the sub networks on the chain.
Uh-huh.
But we are planning to give users a lot of flexibility in terms of what networks are able to accomplish. Um, there's no limit to the number of sub networks you can set up as long as each sub network is also a validator on the main network.
Hmm.
And each sub network also has its own validator set. And there's the other parameters like for each sub network you could set what the denomination for gas is, what the token you use to pay for transaction fees. You can also set it to be as permission or permissionless as you want, right? Basically private versus public blockchains.
Right.
And you can also limit the amount of network participators. So let's say I want to set up a sub network for a traditional bank, right? They might not want as many, might not want random people to persist as validators on the network and confirming transactions. So they might just, appoint like 5 to 7 insiders as part of like a multi-sig or some sort of
Mhm.
structure like that.
That's probably okay. And tell us more about any developments that are on Avalanche up to date.
Yeah, so the Avalanche ecosystem has grown tremendously since we launched mainnet back in September. Actually, the mainnet launched a week after I joined, so that was kind of a interesting process, right? Almost diving ahead in, and I would say that we've come across a few major milestones since then. The first AMM and first iteration of our Ethereum bridge launched in March. That brought in a lot of capital into the ecosystem because we gave people really the first way to swap and transact assets on the platform. It was also almost a proof of concept for our C chain, which I mentioned before is EVM compatible. Penguin, the first AMM, was essentially a fork of Uniswap, and it worked. When it launched, it worked seamlessly on Avalanche, and that really got people thinking, right? And over the a month after Penguin's launch, we saw a lot of other AMMs. We saw kind of a few layer one or layer two aggregators like Yodiak taking the AMMs and building on top of them. And then I would say that the second phase of our development really happened in August when Chainlink fees went live. So that allowed us to implement a couple of different applications, but mostly the key one was lending. Banky launched that brought in, um, and I think with most people they don't really realize how critical lending platforms are for capital efficiency in DeFi, right? If you look on most blockchains in terms of TVL, in the top five, you would expect to see like anywhere from two to four lending platforms. So that was really the second stage, right? Making sure that users are able to kind of leverage their capital in the most efficient manner possible. And then since then, we've really seen the network explode, both in terms of user activity, capital on chain, as well as just transaction activity in general. I think we went from 300 million locked up on the chain to over Sorry, my microphone disconnected. So yeah, we're seeing pretty tremendous growth, and we're pretty excited for all the partnerships and all the users that we currently have, and we'll continue to see it going forward.
And that growth, I mean that rapid growth is somehow related to the bridge between Ethereum and Avalanche.
Yeah, I would say that the bridge is also a pretty key component. Like I mentioned, the first iteration of the bridge went live in March,
Yeah.
but this past July we actually launched an updated Avalanche bridge. It's leveraging pretty cutting edge technology, first developed at Intel called SGX Enclave technology. And
Mhm.
essentially, what it does is it assigns a system of validators, or we call them wardens, that are able to sign off on transactions. It's non-custodial. It's super fast, super cheap, and I think in terms of usage, it's probably the number one cross-chain bridge today. Over 7 billion in total inflows have been recorded so far.
No, that's a lot. That's a lot. And going back to validators, um, do Avalanche built blockchains share validators or network participants of the Avalanche network, or each blockchain has to have their own participants and rules?
Yeah, this really goes back to how you want to set up your own sub network. So all sub networks have to be validators on the main chain. They have to run an Avalanche node. At least that's as far as we've been kind of thinking about it. And then each sub network on its own also has its own validator set. It's got to have a token or some denomination of a token for validators to participate in consensus on that specific subnet. It's also the other important thing is also got to incentivize validators to participate. Kind of like how in the main chain we provide about 50% of the total supply as validator rewards in the
Mhm.
Vox. On each sub network, it'll be very similar. And you can, I think, down the road, you could almost see a world where people are competing for validators. I could see kind of a time, right, where you have 1,000 subnetworks. Each subnetwork needs to maintain proper level of security and decentralization, theoretically, and that each chain is essentially paying validators to help with their help secure their subnet
with the
and process
security.
transactions.
Yeah. And how does the validation work? Is it a set number of nodes or validators which each blockchain should store, or you know, or a blockchain can have an infinite number of validators?
Yeah, I
Or
think it. Yeah, I
right.
think it really depends on the subnet. We are giving users, developers complete flexibility in how they
Okay.
want to set up their subnets. So they can choose basically the entire stack, right, all the way down to the virtual machine that the subnet is, using to process as an operating system, essentially. Um, and if subnets want to, leverage Avalanche consensus, how we do things, or if they want to leverage a different kind of consensus for their individual subnet, they're welcome to do so as well.
Okay. It sounds like a Unreal Engine on gaming platform, right? Or CarX engine. So you have a platform which is completely customizable, and you can build whatever you want on top of it, right? Whether it's, I mean, whatever you want.
Yeah,
It,
yeah, for
it's
the most
it's
part.
that flexible, right? Right? It's that flexible that you can choose whether you want it to be more or less centralized and have a small group of validators, like for example in Ethereum 2, or like thousands and thousands of validators. Depends on what you want, and the platform allows to do that.
Yeah, definitely. As long as you put in the time, resources, you meet the minimum requirements of the network, you have pretty much flexibility to do whatever you need to do to accomplish your goals.
Oh, amazing! And was Avalanche built to compete with any other network? If yes, which one?
Yeah, so we obviously operate, in the same space as other layer one protocols. The the most popular ones today are probably BSC, Solana, Phantom, Ethereum, of course. But when Avalanche was first conceptualized and developed, we really took the best of Bitcoin and Ethereum, right?
Mhm.
Bitcoin taking the fixed supply, adding a deflationary element with fee burning that you see on Ethereum. Well, you will see on Ethereum 2.0. And then taking the smart contract capabilities of Ethereum and implementing that in the C chain. So um, we think, with that being said, right, we think the future will be multi-chain and interoperable. Each blockchain, I think, has its benefits and downsides, right? In terms of decentralization, scalability, and all that. And I think the user experience in the future will be that they don't even realize what chain they're on. You're able to kind of seamlessly bridge and flip through whatever chain you need to be, where to access whatever dApp you need to access. So I think we are in close contact. I'll say this: we're in close contact with a couple of the other layer ones out there. We don't see it as we're directly competing with anyone really, right? I think we're all working together to kind of build out this Web3 thing, trying to figure out what it is.
Okay. And during all of these interviews and shows that we made, we heard a lot about the future of being multi-chain and cross-chain. Um, what is your vision of it? How do like the future is multi-chain? What does it in a couple of words? What does it mean? Does it mean that Avalanche and Ethereum and Bitcoin and for example, Phantom will be so interoperable that you can send a coin, send a value, or transfer an asset from Avalanche to Phantom with ease in a couple of seconds, and there will be no interruptions.
Yeah.
What
So
what does it look like?
yeah. So for a multi-chain future, you're absolutely right. I think you need to take out the friction of moving assets cross chain. That's a main reason why we built the Avalanche Bridge, just to make onboarding into the ecosystem as simple as possible, right? A lot of users they don't necessarily want to go to a centralized exchange and have to withdraw their funds and send it to an address. A lot of times their funds are already on other chains like Ethereum, and they're looking to bridge to Avalanche or Phantom or whatever it may be, right, to access the application, access the farms on that specific chain. And we're already kind of starting to see applications that don't even need you to transfer assets over. There are cross chain farms these days that allow you to LP into pools on, let's say you're on Avalanche, you want to LP into a pancake swap pool. You can do that today.
Hmm.
So it's very, very interesting developments all around. And I think we'll see kind of this interoperability play out more and more.
Okay. Can't wait to see it because we talk a lot and with other project leaders, and we hear a lot about the future being cross-chain and multi-chain. So just getting each of the leaders' opinion of what they think it will look like, and looks like I mean, it's not necessarily look something different. Cross-chain is a cross-chain. There is a blockchain, there is a bridge, and there is another blockchain. But the main goal is to have that interoperability, but to remove that the friction, just like you said, the latency.
Yeah, definitely.
What are the most use cases of Avalanche? I mean, there are many NFT projects, and Particle is using Avalanche, and where else Avalanche can be used?
Yeah, so I would say right now we're heavily focused on DeFi. We think Avalanche is, pretty optimal for DeFi applications because we are EVM compatible. The smart contracts, people are familiar with kind of the Solidity smart contracts and the build out that's required there. Um, we are like you said, we're very much focused on NFTs as well. But beyond, just the profile pic NFTs, right? We really want to explore not only real world use cases, but also novel use cases for how we want to really assign ownership, how we want to give people sovereignty over their own products and IP, right? And then the other area where we're focused on is on gaming. Just combining the best of NFTs essentially with DeFi and putting out engaging applications for users to not only have fun, but also maybe earn a little bit of money along the process as well. And then that's in the near term. I would say that in the medium to long term, we are very much focused on enterprise and kind of mainstream adoption of blockchain. We think that subnets will play a key role in that. Like the example I mentioned before with the bank, a lot of enterprises don't really want to or don't really feel comfortable at the moment operating entirely on a permissionless chain. They don't. It's hard to maintain compliance if you're a financial services or a healthcare company. It's also very difficult to kind of set your own parameters, right? If you want to build out a very specific use case for blockchain. So there is a focus on kind of engaging those enterprise current clients today, and I think a large part of that is education, right? Not only kind of explaining to them what Avalanche, what we're Ava Labs is all about, but also kind of walking them through a blockchain technology as in general and guiding them through the development process.
Great. So just had this idea coming to my mind, wanted to share with you. Is it possible that just like you said, you have some trends on use cases in gaming industry? Um, in order for example, I build a game in on Avalanche, right? And my validators are those who play the game. Is it possible they play, they earn, and at the same time they are the validators. And the more time they are in the game, the best chance they get the validations and their own rewards.
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible, and that's definitely something we've been looking into as well. With blockchain gaming, it's tough because a lot of the existing chains, the infrastructure is just not set up for gaming.
Right.
It's very different from DeFi. I think in DeFi, it's okay to maybe have many transactions, right? And because you're moving, first of all, the amount of capital you're moving is much larger. But also, right, when you're playing a game, you don't want to have to wait around for transactions to process.
Yeah.
So we actually think gaming will be one of the first use cases for subnets, at least in the near term, because with the subnet, you can kind of dictate what the default currency is. You can dictate what gas costs are, transaction speeds. You don't have to kind of deal with uh, the eventual congestion of of an individual network. Um, so yes, I think if you in the framework of a subnet, a a player on the game can also be a developer, can also kind of be a validator on the network, right? So I think those are probably the key roles.
Okay, and when we talk about the gaming, we talk not only about metaverses, right, which is trading right now. It could be like any game with running something like that, like Subway Runner or anything built on blockchain.
Yeah, it could be a Web3 native game, or what we're seeing nowadays is a lot of the big kind of gaming houses, right? The Blizzard Activisions, the Tencents, they're all looking into this area.
Mm,
Either, but it's a lot harder, right? Having an existing infrastructure and then building
yeah.
on top, especially when it comes to blockchain technology, than it is to build from scratch. So, these are large enterprises, I think, for the most part, are kind of still evaluating what the best approach is for now.
Well, when they're evaluating, there's Axie Infinity, which is already by the market cap is bigger than Ubisoft, right?
Yeah.
So so I think they need to evaluate faster. Um, So, taking back the conversation from gaming into like Ava Labs and Avalanche, in November, Avalanche announced a 200 million fund for developers to start building on Avalanche. And priorities are DeFi, enterprise apps, NFTs, and culture applications. DeFi and NFTs are clear. Can you elaborate on enterprise apps and culture apps? What are those?
Yeah, definitely. So you're absolutely right. A couple of months ago, we announced the launch of our Blizzard Fund. It's a joint venture between us and some of our top VCs like Polychain, Three Arrows, Luna, A16Z, and the fund has a mandate really to one encourage growth in the ecosystem, whether that be infrastructure, dApps, tooling, whatever benefits the Avalanche ecosystem as a whole, for users and developers. Those are all investable projects. And then the second key goal is to really grow kind of the business relationships we already have. We found that more than anything, investments really align incentives on both ends. And so far, I think the foundation has completed 30 or probably more than 40 investments to date. And I would say that with each of those, it's definitely strengthened our partnerships with each of those projects. So back to your original question, on the enterprise side of things, we see things moving a little bit more slowly than a typical DeFi or Web3 centric deal. Like I said before, it's a lot easier to build new than to add on top of legacy infrastructure. And
Right.
especially with these large enterprise projects, they're not only a slower development cycle, right? It's going to take anywhere from 6 months to multiple years for a lot of these applications. They're also going to be very capital intensive. So a big focus on Blizzard is seeing where the pain points are in terms of financing, right, and making sure that we bridge that gap. And then in terms of cultural applications, the way I think about Web3 is more than just your DJ Neo farms, right, and your AMMs. It's really about giving people back ownership of their rights online. A lot of when the internet first started, right? Um, a lot of the companies were centralized entities and still are. And over time, it's played out in a way that you have these essentially oligopolies, right? Digital oligopolies that control basically all your rights online. The
Hmm.
information you send, you send and share with your friends. Um, all your messages, right? All your data. It's really being stored in, essentially harvested by these online companies. And crypto is really about, giving ownership back to the creators, back to, the people that originally put these ideas out there. Um, so in terms of, cultural applications, we really want to focus on kind of building out a robust creator economy. Either it's here or it's cross chain. We want to give, creators, influencers, different ways to engage with their fans, different ways to kind of leverage their IP. And at the end of the day, right, giving them more control over their life, over their career, over what they do.
Right. So, as an example of a culture application, can we call Audius? Is Audius an example of culture app?
Yeah, Audius is great. Socios, Chili's, they're all kind of fall into this bucket. And I would say that even even like NFT platforms, right? Just like NFT marketplaces, I would say it would count as cultural. A lot of artists, they've stopped kind of releasing their work just online for people to essentially infringe upon their, rights, right? And then nowadays they're launching NFT drops where they're actually able to kind of interact directly with the people consuming the IP they're putting out.
Mm. Okay, and then and then probably just an idea, just a thought. So there could be an application which is, let's call it a metaverse, but it will combine all of the world's museums because most of us are right now locked, in pandemic and lockdown and stuff, and cannot travel. So as an example, we open the app and we go to the museum, which is like a metaverse online museum of, for example, museum of any museum of New York, right? Or a planetarium. That could be an example of culture app, isn't it? And then
Yeah,
imagine you just go in, and then it's amazing. It's good what technology can do. And then can something like this be built on Avalanche? Absolutely, right?
yeah, definitely, and it's something that we are actively exploring ourselves as well. I think you're absolutely right. As technology develops, the metaverse will become more and more of a reality. I would say,
Yeah,
as hardware, software gets better, right? So I
yeah.
think Avalanche will have a pretty important role to play in terms of the blockchain infrastructure behind that.
Perfect, perfect. And we noticed that the ecosystem has a few community-led accelerators. Tell us more about it. Are they similar to Polka Starter? And it also has an ecosystem farming feature. What is it?
Yeah, so when you mention community-led accelerators, there's a few that come to mind. I think the most well-known one in our ecosystem is probably Avalanche. Mark and his team, they've done a tremendous job kind of building up the platform, building up the community. And I think what really sets them apart from the other IDO platforms on the network is that they really take care, right, with each project that gets onboarded. I think their wait list right now is through the end of January, but I think they've done 7 or 8 sales so far, and with each sale, the user count has just gone up and up. I think the latest one was for Tailcraft. They had 20K users participate. These are all KYC'd individuals. They all stake the native token X Ava to get allocation, and they
Mhm.
also have a structure where they reward Avalanche validators. So the validators on our network with a earlier allocation, which I think is really nice. Um, the others that come to mind, Colony, it's a recently launched community venture capital fund. Um, they're looking to, their goals are very much aligned with what we have internally at Blizzard, which is to make sure that the Avalanche ecosystem gets the funding it needs, right, and the most fair manner possible. I think there's a lot of kind of profit maximization out there when it comes to the VC game and crypto these days.
Yeah.
And I feel like every week there's like a dozen VC funds at launch. So it's good to uh, be able, when you're an early stage project, right? Especially if you don't have too much experience in Web3, it's good to be able to go to a VC that is run with the best intentions in mind. I think that's what Colin is trying to deliver. And then the other one I wanted to give a shout out to is a venture DAO. It's actually a fund that I'm personally involved with, helping advise on certain deals, lending some of my subject matter expertise here. But it's a fund that was put together by some of the OGs in the Avalanche ecosystem. Mark from Avalanche, the founder of, the founders of Snowball, Pangolin, Yodiak, they're all part of that group. And, I think we'll see the trend of these community or ecosystem VCs become more and more prevalent, not just in Avalanche, right, but in other ecosystems. I think there's a lot of, when it comes to funding in crypto, going back to my earlier point, there's a lot of kind of predatory um, things happening, right? And it's always good to have a backers that have your, I think, best interests and the community best interests in mind.
But these VCs, what are their key differences from just a traditional venture capital?
Yeah, so I think I can only really speak to Colony and Venture DAO.
Hmm.
But these VCs, I think typically when it comes to check sizes, right? First off, it's they only really provide what the project needs. So
Okay.
they don't ask to put in a massive check when the round is oversubscribed. I think
Hmm.
another major differentiator is that these VCs are run by developers and founders of other projects. So they have already been through the whole experience, right? The whole cycle of launching a DApp, building the community, um, getting the right connections in the ecosystem. So they bring a lot to the table in that regard, in terms of being able to provide the expertise, right, that early stage developers need to make sure their dApps are a success.
So sharing their experience, right?
Sharing their experience and just really opening up their network, right, to people who need it the most.
Yeah. Cool. Um, and can you tell us more about the Avalanche Incentives Program?
Yeah, so we launched the Avalanche Rush program officially in August of this year. In the beginning, the goal was really to bootstrap liquidity and users on the network. I think we the first and the ROI for a lot of these incentives programs is rather high. I think we provided about 1.5 million incentives to Binky when they first launched their lending platform, and they were able to achieve almost 2 billion TVL within the first month. So the ROI is pretty high in that regard. We also found that users are pretty sticky. The idea of the incentive program is to really give users the opportunity to kind of try out Avalanche, right? I think the classical comparison would be to when the ride sharing apps first launched, Lyft, Uber, the dozen other ones that we don't see today. They all launched with kind of these $25 credits to users. Um,
Yeah.
come. The idea is come try us out. We think you'll like it, and if you do, then you will continue. Even after the incentives run out, and that's exactly what we're seeing here in Avalanche.
Okay.
With the incentives program, we started off by incentivizing the major Ethereum dApps, Aave, Curve, Paraswap, Kyber Network, making sure that when these dApps expand to Avalanche, they have they're able to bootstrap users. Users are able to experience it with proper amount of liquidity, right? The way it's supposed to be experienced, and more times than not, the user says, "Hey, wait a minute, this application is exactly the same as what I find on Ethereum, but it just runs much faster and it's much cheaper." So in that regard, I would say that the incentive program was key to kind of bootstrapping the ecosystem, especially the DeFi ecosystem. I think the incentive program is being rolled out in phases. During our current phase, where we are focusing more and more on native dApps, making sure that if a dApp were to deploy here natively, especially if it has innovative features, right, not found in other chains, We want to make sure that users are aware and that they try out the DApp and and maybe earn some Vox rewards on top of that.
And for you mentioned Curve, and for them to be deployed on Avalanche, do they need to build everything from scratch, or is there a compiler between EVM and your machine? How does it work?
Yeah, so the awesome part about the C chain or the EVM part of the network is that a lot of the existing dApps on Ethereum or other EVM chains can be ported over rather seamlessly. Um, all the existing developer tools, MetaMask, Remix, Hardhat, they're available in Avalanche and fully compatible with what we have here. So when it comes to development, it's just a few tweaks to the smart contracts, making sure that it fits in well with their current system, and then from that it's just launching the application. To give you a sense of kind of the timing around this, when SushiSwap first deployed here, they deployed on their own first of all, so didn't
Wow.
really require much technical assistance from our side, but they were able
Wow.
to deploy everything in about a week and a half. So that's from initial kind of coding to the product launch.
And they didn't apply for the Avalanche incentives.
So there are incentives associated with sushi,
Uh-huh.
but those haven't been rolled out. They haven't gone live just yet.
Okay, but everything they did on their own, right? And it took them only 1.5 weeks, you said.
Yeah, 1.5 weeks to fully test everything, deploy, and this was all the way back in April or May of this year. So it even predates the incentives program. I think they just saw Avalanche as a a good opportunity, right? And they pounced on it.
Wow, that's amazing. Any other updates or off-chain government projects coming on Avalanche, perhaps digital coins or any other updates we should be waiting for?
My mic is bugging out. So we are involved with a couple of different discussions with various governments and central entities around CBDCs. Can't disclose too much yet, but there are a lot of kind of general themes we talked about, right? Government and other industries seeing blockchain as an accelerator and as an enabler for what they're trying to do, and
Mhm.
a lot of these will be kind of set up as subnets. So you'll see more of those in the coming months.
Okay. Any other major updates of the network itself?
Yeah, so I would say as far as the network, we're always putting out updates on the technical side of things. Where right now we call each of our releases today Africa releases. We're on Africa release number 6 right now, and a lot of these updates are really to provide more scalability to what we're doing. And a majority of these have come on the C chain. As we kind of see development happen on the EVM chain, we are also running into kind of the limitations of what Ethereum and its virtual machine are able to do, right? So a lot of the enhancements to the network have been focused around, how do we make transactions cheaper for our users? How do we make the network more robust, probably be able to handle higher amounts of throughput, right? So that all kind of comes with the territory, I would say.
And with okay, you don't have to tell the details, but it's just out of the curiosity, and not only me but the audience as well. Um, so, is there anything any field which is trending? What governments are requesting besides the central banks? Digital currency. I mean, the government for sure would use the blockchain in other incentives initiatives, for example, in anything which requires a fast transaction and security, like in jurisdiction or anything. Is there anything like any particular project which is being really hot? You don't have to tell the details, but give us a little hint.
Yeah, so I would say thematically, right? Anything that is currently a very manual process or
Mm,
requires a lot of kind of manual intervention within government work, we're in enterprises really, um, is a perfect use case for blockchain.
yeah.
I would in banks you're seeing kind of blockchain being used for kind of interbank transactions, interbank settlement, and I think within governments you'll see the same thing. A lot of the traditional infrastructure these days, with regards to payments, regards to operating processes, right? Processing claims, transactions. It's all very antiquated. But there's essentially a centralized database where people may enter in their information. It gets sorted in the back end, but for the most part, each of these, especially if it involves a financial payout, has to be processed manually. And we really see blockchain as kind of the ultimate enabler of automation within these behemoths of institutions.
Okay. And for the digital currencies, there are mm, debates about whether digital currency is right or not, whether it should be or should not be, whether it should be, like strictly regulated by local government, or there should be, a union which could, use the central bank's digital currency in that union of different states. What are your, just from the developer's side, right? We would like to know. We are the users, right? You are the developers. You probably have more knowledge on this. So, what are your, thoughts and vision? Are digital, central banks digital currencies, are they coming for real, or these are just, gossips around?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be completely decentralized. I think there is always going to be an element of the government, whatever government may be, right, needing to have some sort of a heavy hand in these decentralized currencies. And I think it's probably needed for the industry as a whole to progress, right?
Yeah.
Again, thematically, we and other blockchains and protocols are working very closely with regulators around the world to make sure that whatever we're doing, right, we're doing it in a compliant manner possible. We're providing guidance and education both ways, right? Making sure that the regulators really understand the goals and objectives, but also on the other side, right, the regulators should be letting Web3 native organizations know what their preferences are in terms of how they want the space to develop. So I think it's gonna be very much a joint effort. And I'm not a legal or regulatory expert by any means, but I would say that um, more often than not, when you work with regulators, when you collaborate with them, is at least a better outcome than if you were to take the other approach.
Okay. Are you good in gaming though? Because I want to ask a question which is related to gaming. Will there be uh, PlayStation blockchain or anything, or Xbox on blockchain? I mean, will will the gaming industry, with online gaming industry, with metaverse, let's call it, be so so expanded, that much developed that it will be, like cross-platform?
Yeah, I would say that traditional gaming, the centralized type, right, the PlayStation, Xboxes, PC games for the most part, those are gonna be here to stay. Not I think the misconception is a lot of people think because blockchain is such great technology, there's so much promise, it should be applied to everything, right? And that's just not the case. I think a lot of traditional games probably run better without having to rely on a blockchain network or blockchain infrastructure. Um, but the tides are changing a little bit in terms of what we're seeing from a user perspective, right? I think long gone are the days where users are willing to pay kind of monthly subscriptions um, or even pay for a game when you buy off the shelf, right? Like a disc in GameStop or something. More and more so, you're seeing these kind of freemium models come into play, right? A League of Legends, everything that Epic Games puts out, it's all free to play. You just have to pay for cosmetic add-ons like skins or weapons or whatnot, right? So and then as Web3 becomes more prevalent, you're going to see that change as well to from a freemium model to a model where the game is actually paying the users for their time. And gaming, more than anything, right? It's an attention economy. It's like social media, right?
Yeah.
You can only really pay attention to one game at a time. So I think there's a clear structure in place to kind of incentivize users, right, for playing your game versus others. And I think you're going to see that theme play out more and more in gaming, whether it's on blockchain or otherwise.
Okay. So there will be changes in this industry as well. It
I, I, I
always
would
is.
I would say so. If I had to put money on it, I would say that the industries will change over time.
Yeah, yeah, they always progress. It's an evolution, right? Evolution is on everything. Like, people evolve, and then the gaming industry and all the surroundings of evolve.
Yeah, it's inevitable, right?
Inevitable, of course. And can we jump to questions from the audience?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I would start with a question from Zero Xim. I'm a developer interested in building a P2E project. Do Avalanche X support indie developers? Is there an NFT standard if we build a GameFi project on Avalanche?
Yeah, so I'll take each question one by one. So
Yeah.
for the first part, um, I would say that most developers in our ecosystem are indie developers. They're all, most of them run decentralized teams when they launch their DApp, right? And pretty much all of them when they first start don't really have any sort of formal backing. They kind of have a good idea. Our network is permissionless. They're able to kind of experiment, play around with it, and launch whatever they want to, launch, right? And for developers in general, we offer a variety of different resources. On the business development side, we help developers, with their community building. We make intros to partners in the ecosystem. Financially, we like I said before, we also help invest in projects, right, if they need the funding. And beyond that, we also coordinate very consistently with our tech and marketing teams. Our tech teams typically don't help developers kind of hands on keyboard do the coding work, but we do provide input, right? If they have any questions about deploying Avalanche specifically. And then on the marketing side of things, we have over 450K followers on Twitter. We have a pretty wide reach. So not only that, but ecosystem projects in our ecosystem like Trader Joe, Pangolin, Banky, they all have large communities. So there is cross-pollination that can happen there. And then in terms of the NFT standards, most NFTs use the traditional Ethereum standards on Avalanche. Most are built with the ERC 721 standard, fully interoperable with any smart contracts deployed on Ethereum and other EVM chains.
Okay, thanks. Next question comes from John Rister Puyon. Will we have any Avalanche dApps available after mainnet launch? And how these dApps will answer the question of why Avalanche?
Yeah, so our mainnet launched about a year ago, so we're a little bit past that now. But there are a ton of dApps currently live on Avalanche. I think the last time I counted, it was the number was at over 400, and that's only over the past not even over the past year. It's really since just February or March when we launched the first app, which was Pangolin AMM. And when it comes to why Avalanche, right? There's a variety of reasons. I think at the core of it, we offer a scalable, inexpensive, and fully decentralized network for application development. Our C chain is EVM compatible, so like I said, a lot of even the apps running concurrently on other EVM chains, their experience is just so much smoother and better on Avalanche, and that's what most users have found. And then in terms of kind of the native dApps in our ecosystem, right? It's super easy to deploy smart contracts on Avalanche. It's from a developer's perspective, they don't have to. There's not too much learning, right? If they're already know Solidity and are familiar with the tools on Ethereum. So I would encourage any developer on Avalanche to really give it a shot, right? Try out the experience. It's going to be very familiar to what they already know, and for most it's a reason to stay.
And for as a feedback, when users build on Avalanche, I mean, you probably have this knowledge, you probably have this feedback. Why did they choose Avalanche? Just one or two words, three, three words. Why choose Avalanche? Just name three.
Yeah, so if I had to boil it down, it would be the existing tooling, the EVM compatibility aspect of it, the community we've built here. I think it's a really fun but also very intelligent community. And then the third is just all the major ecosystem players in the space. I think as more DApps come to Avalanche, right? There's a compounding network effects, and we're seeing that grow more and more exponentially.
Okay, so we got the answer. The question from Cyril Carrion. Can you tell me what are the biggest achievements of the project over the past year and now?
Yeah, there's quite a few. So well, last September I made at launch, so that was achievements by itself. I think not a lot of people realize, right? There's a lot of work that goes into getting ready for something like that. Getting the appropriate exchange listings. We hit the ground running with the biggest ones, right? Binance, Huobi, OKX, and then beyond that, I would say that the February, March, April timeframe was highly critical to our development with the launch of Pangolin, with the launch of the first Ethereum bridge, and then that's when we start to see a lot of the what we consider nowadays the OG projects get their start, right? Um, Yodiak, Snowball, Lydia Finance, all those guys they got started around that time frame. And then I would say that the other kind of critical time frame was in August. In July, August, we launched both Avalanche Rush Incentives Program,
Mhm.
the updated Ethereum bridge, what we call it the Avalanche bridge nowadays, as well as the introduction of a lot of the major large cap Ethereum projects, the Aves, the Curves, the Parasofts, all the guys you mentioned previously. And then after that, right, going back to the point on network effects, the ecosystem nowadays is kind of growing organically on its own. Um, there's still the need for kind of what we offer, which is a white glove, almost partnership service, right? But a lot of DApp teams, they're just kind of deploying on their own. They may reach out to us to help with a little bit of community building, marketing. Um, but I would say that over the past year, we've seen that the gradual shift. And then looking forward a little bit, right? We're releasing a couple of new innovative products. We're releasing our own browser extension and mobile wallets. We're adding more chains to the bridge. We're also releasing a couple of software development kits and dApps internally that I think would be a benefit to the ecosystem. And of course, we're also developing the use cases of functionalities around subnets, getting that ready.
Okay. Question from um, Egeon. Egeon. I hope I got it right. I've been seeing Avalanche actively promoting on social media lately. Great job. Just want to find out the difference between parachains and the solution that you are offering.
Yeah, and I assume the question is about parachains on Polkadot. So
Yeah.
I think we covered this briefly earlier, but it's essentially fundamentally it's very different from a technical perspective, but the end goal is the same, right? And a lot of these blockchain networks, what we're seeing nowadays, especially if they're EVM based, is a problem with bloat, right? As the network gets larger, there's more and more users, more and more transactions. That also pushes the platform tokens of these networks, right? Just look at BNB, look at Vox, look at Sol. They're all at kind of all-time highs, and that's an issue, right? Both from a cost perspective as well as from a transaction throughput and speed perspective.
Yeah.
So the only solution around that, apart from kind of layer two scaling implementations, right, is to build horizontally,
Yeah.
leveraging multiple um, single state individual state blockchains that run parallel and are composable, interoperable with each other. So I would say that the main difference between us, our approach, and Polkadot's approach is that our subnets, they don't go through an auction process, as long as you have the necessary stake to be a validator in the main network, which is right now 2,000 of Vox. That number will go down, by the way, over time. You're able to set up your own subnet. Also able to kind of permission your own rules around the subnet. I think it does offer a higher degree of flexibility here on Avalanche. And I think the other main differentiator is that there's no limited number of subnets. I've been hearing the number, 100 maximum subnet, maximum parachains allowed on Polkadot. I'm not sure if that number is going to change in the future, but on Avalanche, there's no limitation on how many subnets can be implemented.
Okay. Last question. Coming from N3. What's your view on Avalanche blockchain? Like other blockchain networks, they are designed for corporations. Some have high TPs to process FI's demand. What's Avalanche USP in this case? You can read it, right? Should be on the screen.
Yeah, it's on the screen. I can read it, no
Yeah.
problem.
Yep.
So I would say that in general, what Avalanche allows for is we really fulfill the blockchain trilemma, right? The network is scalable. We process anywhere from 1,000 to 4,500 transactions per second, depending on the subnet implementation. It's super decentralized. I think we have probably the most validators of any major layer one chain. We have over 1,000. I think it might be at 1.1K now. And it's also secure, right? Avalanche consensus is parameterized security up to 80%. So up to 80% of the nodes on the network or the stake on the network can be malicious before it starts, processing transactions maliciously. On other networks for comparison, kind of the classical Nakamoto consensus networks like Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're safe up to 51%. So you would need 51% of the hash power of the network to really take it over. And then a lot of the other proof of stake networks out there, they rely on classical consensus in most cases, which is only 1/3. So you only need 1/3 of the stake to take it over. So what you're seeing a lot of these chains is, the stake is, as on Avalanche, is decentralized, is kind of centralized at the top, where it's on some of these chains, even the top 5 validators have over 33%. So we really see Avalanche as kind of the sweet spot, right, between all of this. And like we said before, the use cases are very broad. If you develop on the C chain, anything that's EVM compatible, anything that relies on smart contracts can be implemented here. And then once subnets become more feature complete, I would say that it really opens the doors to private blockchains, permission blockchains, really designed for enterprises and corporations.
Thank you very much. What should one take to become a validator? What's the process?
So we have pretty robust documentation on our website, but it really is a pretty simple process. Most validators set up their nodes within a day. There's 2 real requirements. One is the initial stake of 2,000 of Vox, which I mentioned probably will go down with governance over time. And then the other requirement is just being able to kind of petition your own, either set up your own infrastructure or petition infrastructure from a cloud provider like AWS or Microsoft Azure, right? So as long as you have those 2 pieces, setting up a validator node is pretty simple. The documentation runs on the website, runs you through step by step.
Okay, thank you very much. Eric, there will be a question from my side, probably not related to the topic. So you've been in PwC, right? Now you moved to Ava Labs. Do you feel any difference in the community, in your work atmosphere? I mean, working for a blockchain company is something different from like traditional companies you've been working in giant PwC. Is there any difference? Is there anything made you like exciting about what you're doing right now? Is there anything you could probably say that working on a blockchain is probably better because of this or that, or working for a blockchain company is more exciting because of this and that.
Yeah, are there any differences? There might be too many to count, but I'll try to boil it down. I think within Web3 and crypto, the general atmosphere seems a lot more collaborative. Um, it's decentralized for the most part. You're interacting with, essentially anons on the internet, right? Providing their views and providing their input. So I would say that having our ears and eyes to the community is very important, especially in crypto. Um, and the other major difference is I think working in a traditional company, things move so slowly. I think for each project or engagement I was on at PwC, from contracting to when we get the project done, is typically anywhere from 6 months to like a year and a half, 2 years even, or even 5, 10 years,
You,
depending on
you
what kind of
can't
deal it is.
you can't afford that latency in
Oh, you
blockchain,
you
right?
can. You get crushed. I don't even if you don't ship product, on a very, aggressive timeline these days, I think, it's your chances of success are going to be drastically lower, right,
Yeah.
than a project that works very quickly. And I think blockchain as an industry as a whole, it's a lot more innovative. It's funny you bring up PwC, Aziz, because like at my time there and back in 2016, 17, I actually did some work for the think tank around blockchain. And
Okay.
during that time, we were talking a lot of hypotheticals, right? And it was mostly around
Yeah.
educating ourselves on what this thing actually is. And that process has, I think, dragged on for the last like 4 or 5 years. I think, with a lot of the traditional companies, right? It takes them a while to, wrap their head around and figure it out, see if it's here to stay, which is understandable, right, given their risk profile.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, right, if you're not making moves or if you're not actually doing work, you're getting left behind. And I would say
Yeah.
that a lot of the major players in crypto, 5, 10 years down the road, won't be traditional companies. They won't be the incumbents. They will be the newer companies that have built their business model from the ground up and have and will overtake the traditional industries, at least in the areas that they focus on.
Okay. So, do you mean that the future companies will be similar to DAOs,
Yeah,
or
that
they will operate in the same way as that? There is a one goal, one aim, there is a one structure, but there won't be a sole governance, but how do I say it? Let's say the salary will be distributed just like in validation to everyone who does, who brings more to the company itself.
Yeah, I would say that's one way to think about it. I think with DAOs, they're really an enabler for governance.
Hmm.
And again, not every crypto project needs to be a DAO.
Yeah.
I've gone on calls with projects that have like a very decentralized structure, and and for the better or worse, these calls had like 20 people on it, and it would just be
Yeah.
like me and maybe one other teammate, and we're like, wow, I didn't realize we were talking to like a whole crowd, but not every project needs a DAO, right? In some projects it works very well, and in some projects, you might want one central leader kind of driving the direction, right? So
Yeah.
it really depends on what you have set up, and but DAOs in general, I would say, are here to stay as well.
Okay. And the transformation of the business models are here as well. Not to stay, but the transformation is ongoing, and it will be more visible in how many years? In 3, 5?
Yeah, the industry's still young. I mean, we're all getting in early. So I would say in the next 3 to 5 years will be absolutely critical. Just see how far we've come, right? In the since Bitcoin
Yeah.
launched into the early 2000, right? Since Ethereum launched in 2016. I think we're really just scratching the surface. The industry is going to be very different a year from now, 3 years from now, especially 5 years from now than it is today, right? And then I
Yeah.
think, over time, I think blockchain technology is going to be one of those things people don't even think about. Um,
Right.
like for example, if a company launched these days, right, it's pretty much a given that they will have a strong online presence, that they'll have social media, that they'll have a mobile application, right, or a way for people to access their products and services on mobile. And those ideas were all novel, early 2000s. No one, the iPhone wasn't out yet. There wasn't any sort of social media. Internet was just getting started, right? And I think a lot of people don't realize, right? Coming back to the point that the incumbents will not be the winners. I think when the internet first launched, people immediately thought, oh, this will be great for existing businesses, right? Johnson and Johnson, Procter and Gamble, they'll be able to sell more products. Um, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, they'll be able to sell more content, right?
Right.
But the winners after 20 something years of this are the Facebooks, the new content creators, as
Yeah.
well as the Amazons of the world, right? The people that were bringing innovation, that are bringing new businesses and companies to the market rather than the existing players.
It is very interesting that I would like to share it with the viewers. To viewers, I mean, you guys have been watching our interviews and our AMAs and conferences for the previous conference for some time now, and this is why we are doing this is to for you to get more education, to have a vision, to open the eyes, to probably encourage, and so that you can guys tell your friends or relatives or someone who are very skeptic about blockchain. See, now we have Eric from Ava Labs who said the same thing that previous speaker said. The future of blockchain will be the way that we won't think about blockchain, right? We will have an application which was built on blockchain, but we won't say, hey, it's built on blockchain, right? So it will be so widely used, it will be so evolved that all the applications will be built on blockchain. It's like like we said before, like a Google. Google is built. We don't know what's behind it, how the engine works, what are the coding parameters, and all the stuff. It's just a Google. You just type in and use it. There will be an application which is built on blockchain as a search engine. You will search, or just like a YouTube, you will browse videos, but it will be built on blockchain, and it won't be visible. And that's when the blockchain wins, right, Eric? That is kind of future we will see.
Yeah, the blockchain wins when people don't even think about it. It's just
Don't even think
working.
about it.
They're working. It's working in the background. It's enabling what it needs to do, and I think every company, right? Every company essentially became a tech company when the internet first started. I think every
Yeah,
company is going to be some way, shape, or form be a blockchain company. 10 years down the road.
yeah. That's good. That's good. It's very amazing that when you talk to people from the industry, from blockchain industry, they always say the same thing. Where the blockchain wins when and not only do they say the blockchain wins when or if they share the vision. They say just it will be the future of blockchain will be where no one will know about the existence of blockchain. So it will be there, but no one will think about it, right? No one will care about, let's say, that it's built on blockchain and stuff.
Yeah, I
And you
mean,
just said the same thing.
yeah, I think the
Amazing.
caveat is that people like me and you working in the space, we're always going to be more bullish on blockchain. I
Well,
think.
you can't be bullish because you look around and you see all these dApps are built. Just look at, I mean, yield farming. What is yield farming? Curve finance. You just look at it. Well, if you tell me like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there will be yield farming, I would say, well, you're crazy. Blockchain is evolving. You look at all these dApps that are building on blockchain. These are amazing. I mean, look at Sandbox, right? Look at Sandbox where people are selling, Lego-like built yacht, which is on somewhere in the cloud. You can touch it for millions of dollars, right?
Yeah,
You
definitely.
can't be bull. I mean, you cannot be not bullish on blockchain when you see these applications and their success.
Yeah.
So no more skepticism. The blockchain, it will evolve. It will grow. and it's very good to have you, Eric. Thank you very much for sharing all the information about Avalanche, providing us with the educating us, providing us with all the information on updates on Avalanche. I'm pretty sure that we now have more knowledge about the network, about its incentives, about the programs it has, about the updates that are waiting for us. And thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much, all of our users, for being with us. Eric, if there is something you would like to add, please go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. First of all, Aziz, this was super fun. I could talk about this stuff with you probably all day,
Yeah.
but I think everyone has their busy days. So as I think one final plug, we are doing a hackathon. We are co-sponsoring a hackathon with Morales. We have
Mhm.
about 20 to 10, 15 to 20 different partners we're currently working with. The kickoff will be this coming Monday. So
Okay.
I'll send you a link, Aziz, to share
Yeah,
with
please.
the crowd here. But
Of
it'll be
course.
a great way for especially new developers to get into the ecosystem.
Of course, of course, I will definitely do that. And Eric, you are always welcome to come to join our show, and just stay in touch. And we will see you soon.
Yeah, definitely appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye
Bye
bye.
everyone.